Hello and welcome to Strange Stories. It's great to have you here. We are all about sharing stories of near-death experiences from around the world in the hopes of bringing some light and inspiration to your day. Our daily videos offer a glimpse into what lies beyond this life, and we believe that they can help us all appreciate the gift of life a little bit more. If you enjoy our content, please consider liking, subscribing, and hitting the notification bell to stay up to date on all of our latest videos. Your support means the world to us and helps us continue to grow. And to our returning viewers, welcome back. We're thrilled to have you with us again. So go ahead, grab a cozy blanket, get comfy, and join us for today's incredible near-death experience story. My name is Daniel Berdichevsky, and I'd like to introduce myself. My age is 34, and I live in San Diego, California. I was born in New York City and raised in Arizona and California. And today, I'm going to tell you about a near-death experience I had. I was 19 years old and had a medical condition in which I had very high blood pressure, a very rapid heart rate, palpitations, and other such symptoms, as well as general feelings of fatigue and dizziness, and a general sense of being unwell. And despite going to one of the best doctors in my area and having every test imaginable performed, nothing was conclusive. So I was just put on one medication after another because one would work for a while and then stop working for whatever reason. This would happen over the course of 5 or 6 medications. Then again, who doesn't? This doctor, they were possibly thinking about getting a specialist or something, but they couldn't figure out what was causing the high blood pressure or the extremely fast heart rate. So I just tried to make the best of a bad situation. And because my mother is very religious in Russian Orthodoxy, she frequently visits convents and monasteries for the purpose of getting away, praying, or something of the sort. Because of my condition, she decided to take me hundreds of miles away on the California-Oregon border in the hopes of healing me. She had people pray for me and other such things. So I was probably fatigued and worn out on the second or third day I was there, around midday. So I had to go take a nap in the middle of the day. And we had these teeny tiny rooms all to ourselves. I went to one of the rooms to sleep and just lay down. Not even 5 minutes go by. Not asleep at all, just wide awake staring at the ceiling. I begin to feel as if I'm crawling out of my body. I get the sensation that I'm crawling out of my chest and I pull myself out. And while this was going on, I could actually hear my heartbeat slowing down until I heard the last beat. And around that time, I found myself on the ceiling, staring down. When this was happening, it felt extremely real, solid, lucid, and fully conscious. It was also extremely perplexing because I couldn't figure out who I was staring at. I honestly had no idea that was me. And the fact that I was on the ceiling, several feet in the air, looking down, didn't seem or feel out of the ordinary to me. For some reason, it just felt normal to me at the time, but I began to look around, my arms outstretched. They were light, but I could feel them, as well as my legs. I was still just a body, but I did notice some significant improvement. For instance, I could see 360 degrees all around me, and it isn't even always the eyes. It's more like I'm beaming my whole being all around me. I also discovered that I could see through the walls. There were also a number of monks praying at the church next door, and I looked at them through the wall. Not only did I hear the monks pray, but I felt everything they felt. I was overcome with emotion. I had the impression that they were sincerely attempting to communicate with God. They acted as if their hearts were truly in the right place. In that prayer state, their intention was pure. They wanted to see God. I remember looking at that and being grateful that they were so genuine. So I morphed back into the ceiling, and that's when it hit me that the person on the bed was me. When that realization hit me, I shot through the ceiling and experienced a sensation I'll never forget. Indescribable. I always like to compare it to a roller coaster when you're going down the first drop, but in reverse because this was going up. The vacuum cleaner simply sucked up into the air right through the wall and ceiling. And I remember almost trying to catch my breath, but I didn't have to. I wasn't in a body, but I did feel like I was breathing. It is difficult for me to explain. And so I find myself way up in the air. I'm talking about ignoring the Northwest, the Pacific Northwest, and Northern California. I'm probably overlooking the entire region from several thousand feet above. And I noticed a lot of small wildfires all over the place. It appeared to be surreal. It appeared strange. Everything had a simulation-like quality to it, but not all at once. But my attention was drawn elsewhere, and I completely fused my consciousness with a city. And I'm almost certain it was San Francisco, a city I'm familiar with. And I began projecting my consciousness, and it felt like tentacles or neurons were simply connecting everything. As I could see, I could concentrate on one person, and I could sense everything they were experiencing, everything they were doing, everything they were. I could feel what they were feeling, including their anxiety, pain, joy, and everything else. And it was both cohesive and strangely beautiful. And I did it for quite some time. It felt like I'd been doing it for a long time. It felt like this organism just moving around the city and feeling everyone's presence. It had the appearance of an organism. Each person feels like an individual cell that is a part of this collective unit. And I rose higher into space until I was well above the entire planet. I could see it from quite a distance, and I see the Earth shimmering with this gleaming, crystalline substance. And I recall thinking to myself that it was beautiful and alive, and that this rock we call home isn't really a rock at all, that this is a real, living, sentient being. And I could actually feel a breathing sensation coming from this planet we call Earth. I could feel it actually. It appeared to be the sensation or motion of breathing. So I took a closer look and noticed that the breathing was labored. It was in trouble. It was in a state of discomfort. And I wanted to associate whatever this crystalline structure looked like with some strange mesh spider's web. I'm not sure how to put it. It almost appeared as if it shouldn't be there, but it is. And while it's good that it's there, it's also not good. I'm not sure how to put it. And it's experiencing labored breathing, and I remember feeling concerned and uneasy that this was happening. And I went further out in space and saw our Milky Way, which looked very similar to Hubble images, which is strange because I know so many of those images are doctored and such. But it appeared to be very similar, with very bright colors and a radiant galaxy full of light in the universe, which is what I saw next. I eventually ended up in the golden light, which was an indescribable experience. I began to notice golden sparkles being surrounded by these extremely bright golden sparkles, and I was never enveloped or infused by this cloud-like light. It was this ethereal light mist that hummed. It was stunning. It was almost musical. It was humming. It felt very real. It appeared and felt like home. It felt very familiar immediately. The sensation of a body is still present, but it is beginning to fade. I actually went upside down and flowed in this direction because, remember, I'm going backwards, but my consciousness could see all around. But then, as I noticed the golden light, I sort of flipped forward to observe the light and lost all sense of my body. It vanished completely, and I became a form of consciousness. I recall it vividly. I had a dark blue color, a radiant blue orb that was very electrical and alive, and being in that state felt so pure. It felt completely natural, much more so than being here. It was the most polished version of my character. At that moment, when I started facing the golden light, it felt like this existence on Earth was an absolute minuscule, tiny, irrelevant little speck, as if you went in and just dipped your toe in the water. That's all, and it's finished. You don't go swimming in the ocean for days on end. No, this life felt like you just dipped your tiny little toe in and it was done. As in the blink of an eye, I didn't care what it was. It felt like I'd been on Earth for eons. It's completely out of date now. This love came from the light. I felt this love and knew everything I would ever do for the rest of my life. I will be cherished and loved. It'll not deviate in the least. It'll not change at all. It'll remain the same now and in perpetuity. That love is extremely powerful. It was a torrent of unending love. So it basically led me to another blue orb with which I'm very familiar. I couldn't place the individual. They just appeared to be a blue orb, and I had known this orb for eons, for eternity. It felt like the most recent family reunion. There was no time to waste. It felt like nothing existed. It had a static feel to it. It was like being suspended animation. I also saw other orbs that were a variety of colors. I saw yellow. I saw white, pink, blue, velvet, red, and other colors of souls floating around in complete freedom. They were in the happiest and most joyful state you could imagine. It was a great place to be. It was so amusing. It was so innocent. It was ecstatic. It felt completely natural to be there. Remember how I just talked about everything being balanced, broken down, and canceled out? Similar in some ways. I'm looking at a wheel, which is the Earth, but it's actually all of the Earth's events, past, present, and future, all happening at the same time. And it had the appearance of a film reel. A film reel, such as 8mm film, would, on the other hand, move in one direction and then be projected onto a screen by light. This was not the case. There was no one way to go. Everything was pointing in every direction. There was no distinction between future, past, and current events. Everything was fused into the singular moment. But I could still tell the difference between the past and the future. I sort of projected my consciousness into the events I was watching, and I recall seeing a lot of the ancient past that you might imagine. I recall seeing chariots in Rome and colosseums in the Roman Empire. Less in the past, for example, the British Isles, Ireland, and the kingdoms in those regions of the world, as well as other places around the world with different ruling bodies and such. And I remember thinking that it was all just a blip on the radar. And when I look at these rulers, I see how important they think they are. Carl Sagan is my friend because he accidentally said the same thing when discussing the famous Pale Blue Dot speech, where all the kings and queens who think they're almighty. He's completely correct. He was dead on. That's exactly what I observed. It seemed like a joke. It's like, who are our modern day kings and queens? Are they presidents? It's actually Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. Those are the people we worship. Really, I only remember seeing all of these events unfold in this wheel and having no memory of the future when I returned. I'm sure I remembered it back then. And the funny thing is, ever since I was shown this wheel of time, I've been obsessed with trying to discover the future. And this is why I keep thinking it's always existed, because that's the impression I got, or what I saw when observing it. It's completely timeless. Its existence is infinite. So I return to the golden light, and it speaks to me. Most people who've had a near-death experience remember what the light told them as clearly as day. It's as if it's the most important aspect of their entire experience. Except for what the light told me and those future events, I remember everything in great detail from my entire life. I recall it clearly speaking to me. It wasn't like a voice, but it was similar. Okay, so people are talking about telepathy. That is not entirely correct. It's a voice, and it's not a voice all at once. It's almost as if everything is a paradox. As difficult as it is to explain, that is how it felt. And it told me, while I don't remember the words, I sensed I couldn't stay, and I was really upset. And I really wanted to stay, and it began sending me back through all the realms again. And I saw everything in reverse order, almost as if it was done on purpose and slamming back into my body. I came to after slamming back into my body and took a very heavy breath, as if gasping for air. I didn't breathe for about 10 minutes, and it felt like someone took a sledgehammer and hit me in the chest as hard as they could. The agony was excruciating. I was dizzy and sat up on the bed. As I walk around, the first thing I do is look in the mirror. Why am I doing this? I'm not entirely sure, but I look into the mirror and I look pale as a ghost. I'm white. I had bags under my eyes that were healed after this. My blood pressure returned to normal after a few days. I didn't have any heart palpitations. Except for my lifelong asthma, I had no medical issues and everything was fine. And I told my mother and brother, who were with me at the time, about the experience almost immediately. We even talked about it with one of the Orthodox priests later that night. So that's my experience, guys. I hope you enjoy it. Have a wonderful day.